And now that I've taught you that, I'm going to show you an exception to that, because there's an exception to every rule, right? So the global keyword is something we can use inside a function to tell Python that inside this function, if I'm talking about X, it's now the global X that I'm talking about, which means this variable in Vegas is also the same as the global X, which is outside. So now when I run this code with just that one change, right, I'll go back here. I'll say global X, just like that. Now when I run the code, the outside X is affected by what happens inside the function. So now when I change X inside the function to 33 and print it, it also impacts the outside of the function X. Now you might think, oh, that's a cool shortcut. It allows me to take care of things like to changing variable values from inside my function. Common thing to do, kind of a mistake from a development standpoint, because it violates the basic principle of the function as a black box. Because now my function is requiring that there is a global variable out there that is the same name as what's inside the function. Because look at what happens if I say inside my function I have this variable. Now what happens? That's an interesting thing, right? And if I say XX here, it doesn't work because that variable doesn't exist outside the function. And for the function to work properly, if I'm intending for it to affect something outside the function, it's got to have that same name. So if I want my function to actually work in the black box way where I can share it and hand it out and reuse it in any program I want, I got to make sure if I want you to get data into my function, I'm using parameters. If I want to get data out of my function, I'm using return values. I want to avoid using global at all costs. It exists, but it's not something you should use, especially not if there's a better way to do it. Sometimes the workaround for using global is so much, or for not using global, is so much work and so convoluted that using global solves a multitude of problems, and you're willing to say, okay, I wrote this function, but it sure is not going to be reusable outside of this program, so I'm going to go ahead and use global because it's going to save me 10 hours of work or whatever. Yes, sir.
So if at all feasible, avoid using global.
Yes, if at all possible, avoid using global. That is the short story version of what I'm saying. It's good to know it's there, but it's also better practice if you don't use it.